Hi everyone, in this lesson we're going to be discussing typography, specifically the style, psychology, selection, and production of it. I absolutely love typography because there's so many ways to use it and so many creative things that you can do with it. I'm going to be splitting the video up into 4 parts. There will be 4 quizzes, small ones, at the end of each part, over the 4 subtitles on the screen. So let's begin. Okay, so let's begin with the general definition for typography. It is the art of arranging type, which includes letters, numbers, and symbols, so that it is pleasing to the eye. This includes not only the font that is used, but how it is arranged on the page, such as letter by letter, size, line spacing, etc. So within typography, there are 2 words that are used a lot, that is typeface and font. And we're going to talk about the difference very briefly of those 2 words. And these are in your vocabulary, so I would like for you to write these definitions down on that paper. First, we have typeface. A typeface refers to a group of characters, such as letters, numbers, and punctuation, that share a common design or style. Examples include Times New Roman, Arial, Helvetica, and Courier. So those examples that I just listed, those are the titles of that font or typeface group. A font, however, refers to the means by which typefaces are displayed or presented, or in other words, the way that they look. There are 5 different styles that I'm going to go over with you. They could also be called classifications or families. I'm going to use the term style. Those 5 are serif, sans serif, script, display, and geometric. There are a ton of other classifications, but these are probably the 5 most common, so we're going to stick with those for right now. The first family that we're going to talk about is the serif style. These are fonts that are recognizable by the small lines at the ends of various strokes of a character. And when I mean character, I mean the actual letter or number, etc. These lines make a typeface easier to read by guiding the eye from letter to letter and word to word. They're often used for large blocks of text, such as in a book, like that you'd be reading casually, or maybe a textbook, and also in a lot of magazines that you may read. Here are some examples of some serif fonts. These that you can see, I'm kind of highlighting, these are the serifs. That's what I mean when I say like the little lines that come off of a character. So anything that comes off in such a way as this, it's not just a straight line, it's got like something added onto it, that is what I am talking about. A sans serif font means without lines. So the previous ones, they had those little tips on the ends of the characters. Sans serif does not. Sans serif fonts are often used when a large typeface is necessary, such as in a magazine headline. These can be easier to read on a computer screen. So here is an example of a sans serif font. You can see that there are no lines coming off of the edges of the characters. It's very straightforward. Sans serif can be bold, like the one that you're looking at, or it can be kind of frail looking, a little bit thinner in the character size, etc. The next style that I want to show you guys is script. It's based on handwriting, and it offers very fluid letter forms. There are 2 types, formal and casual. Formal would be like your fancy cursive handwriting, whereas casual might be just regular print handwriting or like a very fun cursive. Here's an example of the casual script. You can see that this one still has the cursive element involved into it, but it's a little bit more fun. It's not really something that you would put on a fancy like wedding invitation or something like that. It's just kind of cute. Whereas on this one, the formal script, you can see that it does look a little bit more fancy. It could be on an important document that you might have gotten, like a certificate of achievement, your diploma, stuff like that. Here's one that is completely opposite of the script. A script was very organic in the way that the letters flowed, but geometric is exactly what it sounds like. It is based on geometric shapes. So the letter O would appear as a circle, and letters are very simple. Think about your geometric shapes: squares, triangles, rectangles, circles, stuff like that. That's the basis of the geometric style. And here is your example for geometric. She's got the look. This is just, if you look again, you see the O's in there are completely perfect circles. The G in got, if it didn't have that line coming in, it would also create a perfect circle. You can look and see, you know, the elements of rectangles and squares and triangles. It's very minimalistic, meaning there's just not a lot of anything fancy going on with it. It looks very modern. The last style that I want to show you is display. The main characteristic of display typefaces is that they're unsuitable for body copy, meaning large bodies of text like paragraphs that you would see in an article or a research paper, a book, anything like that. And they're best reserved for headlines or other short copy that needs attention drawn to it. So it's exactly what it sounds like. It's used for a display of something. There's not going to be a whole lot of text within it. It is made to catch somebody's eye if you're trying to sell something. So we're going to look at a few examples. And here they are. So these three examples right here are for display only. You would not want to use those in any kind of body text whatsoever. They would be very hard to read if you were to use them in a large amount. So think about this first one up here with the dots on it. To me, that seems very Hollywood. So say you were writing an article on movies, you could use this font to do your title of the article to catch somebody's attention, and then the body text, the actual part that they would be reading, would be in Times New Roman or Arial or something more simple to read. Okay, so that concludes our first section of the PowerPoint over styles. At this point, you can take a break, and we are then going to start on the psychology of typography. One of my favorite things about it, very cool things, so I hope you get very excited about this. So typography plays a huge role in developing a strong brand identity and a solid first impression. Different fonts can convey different messages. So this is part of the reason why I love typography so much. When you think about all of the things that you see every day with different lettering on them, every kind of lettering serves a different purpose in trying to sell a product or grab your attention in some way. So going back to a few of those families that we were talking about, I'm going to talk about a little bit like what they're associated with and the top 5 typefaces used for those particular purposes, and I'll try to be quick with it. And we're not going to go over all 5 of them, but just a few examples. So serif fonts, they are associated with authority, tradition, respect, and grandeur. Those are just a few words. They are associated with other things as well. But the top 5 would be Times New Roman, which is used all the time for pretty much anything school related or typing up like business documents, things of that nature. You also have Bodini, Georgia, Garamond, and Baskerville. Some of you also might know Baskerville from Microsoft Word. For each one of these fonts, I'm also going to give you some examples, and some of the examples are kind of silly, but you know, they work and kind of give you a picture of when you should and should not use these fonts. So there are some fonts there in front of you: Time, Gap, Yale, the New York Times. All of these are serifs. All of these things are associated with good quality products, things that are kind of timeless. Especially Time Magazine, very renowned, Yale University. So you would use these things on your resume, in the body text of an editorial, when you want to give your research paper that extra assurance of success. You wouldn't want to use it on your child's birthday party invitations because serif fonts can be kind of boring, and you know, if you have a kid, ever, then you want their invitations to be fun looking, not boring. You also wouldn't want to use it for a health and beauty blog because a blog would be online. Serifs don't work as well online. Or anytime you are out of the office, newsroom, university, school, wherever, because again, serifs are usually used for business appropriate things. Sans serifs, on the other hand, are clean, modern, objective, stable, and universal, meaning like you could use them for pretty much anything. The top 5 are Helvetica, which by the way is considered and researched to be the easiest font to read. You also have Veranda, Arial, which I use a lot, Century Gothic, and Calibri. Alright, and here are your examples of some sans serif fonts and who uses them. You've got Microsoft, Nike, Chanel, Evian. You would use these as your corporate presentation header text, extremely small body text, because actually sans serif fonts are easier to read from far away. You would want to do it when you want to emphasize a single word, perhaps, the body text on your website, etc. You wouldn't want to use them, well, basically just on paper. Sans serif fonts are very versatile. You can use them on so many things for different reasons, and there's a lot of different typefaces you could choose from. Some that are more fun to use, some that are more business appropriate, and stuff like that. So slab serif fonts we have not talked about yet. They are serif fonts that use those lines at the end of the characters. They are associated with things that perhaps are bold, strong, modern, solid, maybe funky. The top 5 include Rockwell, Courier, which I also really enjoy using sometimes, Museo, Clarendon, and Bevan. Here are some examples. You can see, as opposed to regular serif fonts, they're a little bit more bold. So if you compare some of these with, say, Times New Roman, you can kind of tell the difference. These are a little bit more out there to make an impression. You would use these perhaps on a billboard ad, and they're also really good to print on poor quality paper. because they're usually pretty legible in cases of poor quality printing, and when you want to attract attention in general. You wouldn't want to use them on your afternoon tea invitation because we're British, right? Or in the body text on your website because, again, you don't usually use serif fonts on a screen. Okay, going on to script fonts. These are associated with things that are feminine, elegant, friendly, intriguing, creative. Top 5 include lobster, which I think is really weird considering it's supposed to be something elegant and feminine perhaps. Lobsters don't really convey that to me. So I don't know why they titled that. Anyway, you also have Zapfino, Pacifico, Lucida, and Brush Script. The ones that you're probably more familiar with would be the Lucida and the Brush Script in this list. And here are your examples. Here we have a couple that are more on the formal script side of things, the Cadillac and Coca-Cola. But then you have the Cadbury and Instagram that are more casual and a little bit more fun to look at. You would use them perhaps on a holiday greeting card, place cards for guest tables at your wedding, and maybe something for a creative company's logo, like Cadbury or Instagram. Actually, all these are logos, so you know. You wouldn't want to use it in body text, again, because who wants to sit down and read cursive style handwriting or typefaces? And you wouldn't want to use it for anything remotely corporate. Maybe perhaps as an award in a corporate business, but documents, no. Alright, so anything that is considered modern, like for instance the geometric that we talked about previously, there are other styles of modern as well, but they're associated with exclusivity. Maybe they're something that's fashionable, stylish, sharp, intelligent, things that could even be considered like technological. The top 5 include Infinity, Eurostyle, Majorum, Matchbook, and Politica. These you're not really going to find on your word processor. They're usually ones that have to be bought and paid for that I'm aware of. That kind of goes back to the exclusivity part of it, I suppose. Here are your examples, and as you can see, a lot of these are considered like technologically associated businesses, like Hulu with the TV, Shutterfly with photos, Facebook, something that's an online social media. I think these examples are kind of funny. When you would use them, perhaps on your hipster photography blog header, your designer sunglasses, a really cool company logo, and when you want to attract the attention of millennials. You wouldn't want to use them in the body text of anything. In this example, it says report. You wouldn't want to use them in conjunction with a script font and anything you're giving to your grandmother. Going back to the conjunction with a script font, the reason is this is very modern and a script is very traditional usually. A lot of times you do want to pair things that contrast with each other, but in this case, the contrast is a little too much. They just don't usually work well together. You may find some that could work with script, but it kind of just depends on the styling of both of them, really. Okay, so if you are here, you have made it through part 2. Congratulations. We are about to start part 3, which will help you decide on what fonts to select when doing certain things. So the big question is, how do you select the right font for the job? The next few slides are some rules, per se, or tips, if you want to call them tips, on how to do this. So with these tips, we're going to be getting into some things that are really going to aid you in your own typeface design. So I really want you to pay attention to these, and as we're going along, maybe start to try and think of some ideas for that. The first tip that I have for you is dress for the occasion. I'm going to use clothing analogies throughout these tips. Hopefully it will help you, maybe provide some humor, I don't know. So you want to know who your audience is and what they will feel is appropriate. So if you're going to a black tie affair, you are obviously not going to walk in with some blue jean shorts and a t-shirt. If it's a black tie affair, you obviously have to dress in formal attire. Suit and tie, fancy dress, heels, you know, stuff like that, dress shoes. Same thing if you are going to your little niece's birthday party. You're not going to show up in a tuxedo, you're going to be wearing jeans and a t-shirt there instead. So the same thing applies to fonts as well. You want to know who is going to be looking at your piece, and are they going to feel like it's appropriate for what they're looking at? Kind of like how we were talking before, like some fonts are better for business purposes, while some fonts are better for, birthday cards and stuff like that. So just think about that. The next one is to know your families. When I say families, that's talking about the styles as before. So serif, sans serif, geometric, script, those kinds of things. Down at the bottom, you see the GHOTMS. You'll see there is geometric, modern, slab serif that we have briefly talked about, along with some other ones that I said did exist. We just weren't going to go over all of them. So the clothing analogy continues, and it gives us a good idea of what kind of closet we need to put together. So, if you can't think of a particular typeface, then narrow it down to at least a family. So are you doing something for a very modern business that is associated with cell phones? If so, you probably want to use something that is geometric. So that'll narrow those font choices down, and you can kind of start going through some geometric styles of fonts. Number 3, don't be a wimp. Plain and simple. The principle of decisive contrast. So depending on what you're doing, it is good to have contrasting styles. Now before I said don't place a modern usually with a script, but you still want to have contrasting styles, such as the title of an article versus the body text of the article itself. It is better to have a larger difference in font style than a small difference, and the next slide shows us that. So here our example says, avoid small, wimpy differences. The top one is Helvetica New, and the bottom is Franklin Gothic. You'll see that they are very, very similar. Probably so similar that you don't even notice any of the differences yourself, but some of the spacing is a little differently, the height is a little different. If you look in the open places on the O's and the D's, the Helvetica is a little bit more round, whereas the Franklin Gothic is a little bit more oval. So when you are trying to show contrast, this is not going to be enough. Even if you bump up the size of the Helvetica as a heading style, it's still not good enough difference to really draw attention to what's going on. But if you look at this, we still have the Helvetica New up at the top, and the bottom, Bimbo, and the contrast, this is a serif on the bottom versus a sans serif at the top. So contrast needs to come in size, weight, and the actual style that you choose. Tip number 4, a little can go a long way. So here's another clothing analogy. I want you to look at the photos. One has kind of an accent to it. Both of them involve pink. One has a ton of pink and is a little scary. The other is using the pink as an accent. So just like clothing, again, you can use a whole lot of something and look like a clown, haha. Or you can use a little bit of an accent and look fashionable. So if you had on pink pants with a pink shirt, you know, that's a little too much pink, okay? No matter what you say. But if you wear some more subtle colors and then involve a little bit of brightness to it, that, you know, draws attention to it as well as provide just a good style contrast. So, continuing this conversation, going away from clothing and to actual typefaces, I want you to look at the title of this menu, House of Thai. I think it's a pretty good choice for a Thai restaurant. It's interesting, it's professional, but still fun at the same time. This is what happens when you use it for the entire menu, though. So, and you'll be able to see this when I do the side-by-side comparison a little bit later, but you have the same exact typeface for the entire menu, and it's a little bit boring, first of all, and also everything is the same size. If this was a full-blown menu where it had pages and pictures that a lot of restaurants do, it would be a lot harder to actually find what you're looking for. You would have to be searching forever to find the noodles. So let's look at what happens when you contrast a little bit more. So this combines the boldness of the heading font, so the House of Thai, and then it's also used for appetizers, noodles, and seafood. And it contrasts with something that is simple. So the bold one is a serif font, and then they use a sans serif for the actual menu items. It makes it easier to read those items, and it also separates the sections better. And here is just a side-by-side comparison of those. You can tell the difference. To me, the one on the left is way more eye appealing, something that I would much rather look at. It looks less busy than the one on the right. And again, I can just kind of, like, I know the different sections according to their headings. And number 5, the last one, there are really no rules. We'll call them guidelines, okay? Really just be creative. It takes an eye for what looks good together, okay? So, newsflash, if you're the kind of person that, you know, likes to put something together and leave it the way it is the first time, that's most likely not going to work. As an artist, you have got to experiment with things and find what works the best. So, you know, try something, keep it around to look at, but try something else and compare the two of them. Several times, artists that create a lot of thumbnail sketches and kind of compare and contrast them and say, I think that this one works best for what I'm about to do. So, you know, use the guidelines that I gave you, but also experiment at the same time because, you know, there are exceptions to some of these rules. Alright, 3 parts down, 1 more to go. At this point, I want you to start thinking about how you would go about creating your own typeface, because this next part that we're going to be discussing is the production of a typeface. We're going to go over just a few things about the creation of one and I also have a couple of videos that I'm going to have you watch, and it'll kind of break it down even more, and they're really awesome examples of what people do out in the real world. Okay, so the production of type. Below is the basic design process. You first must decide on what your design will be based off of. In one of the videos, you'll see that she wanted to do something along the lines of plant life. So she explains it in the video. I won't go into all of that. You can watch the video and see. But she took an idea of incorporating flowers and just the cell life of plants and incorporating that into an awesome font. The second thing is decide which type family works with that idea. So should it be a serif font? Should it be sans serif? Is it like super modern? Should you go with something more geometric? Should you look up some that I didn't go over in the PowerPoint? That's not a bad idea. There's a ton of different families out there to choose from. The third thing, decide how you can incorporate and combine your style with an emotion or a feeling. So again, going back to, what should it be used for? Do you want your font or your type to be, fun and exciting? Do you want it to be super bold and eye-catching? Do you want it to be more elegant and soft? Those are things to be thinking about. 4, make several sketches to see what works best. In your case, and this isn't a large number, okay, I want you to try at least 5 different things. It can be thumbnail sketches of the same letter done in 5 different ways. So if you just take a piece of copy paper and draw 5 little squares or rectangles on there and just kind of play around with your ideas and see which one works the best, that is what I want you to do. That is part of this assignment. I want you to come up with 5 ideas. And then number 5, I want you to create the final typeface on an Illustrator program. In our case, we'll be using FontStruct, and that website is on the next slide. You can also just Google FontStruct, FontStruct.com. So at this point, I would like for you to click on the 2 YouTube videos, not at the same time. And I think you'll really enjoy seeing the whole process put together. Alright, and here's the actual website that you'll be using. I will say that in the past I've had some people draw it by hand, and that would be okay, but I want you to be really precise. You'll actually see that in the videos as they're sketching it, they plan out the spacing and all of that stuff as they go along. If you wanted to do it on graph paper, or if you used a ruler and kind of measured out that and made it look very precise like it would be on a computer, I am okay with that. So it depends on what you want to do. The cool thing about FontStruct is that once you have completed the entire alphabet, you can actually download that and install it and use it in a Word document. I have had students do that. So I think that's really awesome that you can type with your very own creation. So that's the cool thing about FontStruct. I will be producing a video showing you how to use it. So, give you a little tutorial on some of the things that you can do. And then after you watch that video, you can decide if you want to use the program or if you want to draw it out by hand. Well, guys, this is the last slide that I have for you. You're probably shouting hallelujah, and I probably would be too. these are just some sources that I used for this PowerPoint. So if you wanted to click on any of those and just kind of, skim over some other things that might be on the website that I didn't go over, you are more than welcome to do that. So at this point, I want you to start working on your thumbnail sketches, and you can do that coming into class tomorrow. You do not have to do that as homework. You can start sketching those out first thing as you come into class. So I hope this video wasn't terrible, and that, if I need to improve anything, let me know. I'm sure that I do. So anyway, I hope this all helps you, and happy sketching!